Hello and welcome back to U.S. Government and Politics. My name is Jim Toot. I'm an assistant professor of political science here at Central Virginia Community College. In this video, we discuss the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. In the 16th century, the period known as the Renaissance had been underway for roughly 200 years. Europe rediscovered the knowledge of the Greeks such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the 4th century BCE, and from Romans such as Cicero from the 1st century BCE, who wrote about natural law and began to expand on it. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus published On the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres, suggesting that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but that the Earth revolves around the Sun, challenging centuries-old Western ideas of how the universe worked. At the most basic level, the scientific revolution was about using new methods and evidence in order to make conclusions, and this Copernicus publication is often used to note the beginning of what will later be known as the scientific revolution. Many people cite Newton's Principia, published in 1687, as the most powerful publication of this period. It describes the laws of the universe in which most things can be explained with simple principles using mathematics. His observations would not be credibly challenged for over 200 years when Einstein published his theories of relativity. But many of Newton's laws are still being taught in physics and engineering classes. So how was this related to politics in Europe? Challenging prior assumptions on the universe led to people challenging all assumptions, and in the late 1600s and early 1700s, philosophers started using these tools of deductive reasoning on questions like, what rights do we have as human beings? Who gets and confers those rights? What duties and obligations do we have towards each other? What is the role of government? Who has the right to rule? These questions had for thousands of years been of concern to the study of both philosophy and religion. However, without government, according to Thomas Hobbes, there would be no arts, no letters, no society, and which is worst of all, continual fear and danger of violent death, and the life of man solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In his second treatise concerning government, published in 1689, John Locke notes, "The state of nature has a law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone and reason. Which is that law? So reason is the law of nature to govern it. It teaches all mankind who will but consult it, that being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions." These tools and the thought that existing presumptions were open to challenge led to a scientific revolution in politics and religion, often referred to as the Enlightenment. And when his own preservation comes not in competition, ought he as much as he can preserve the rest of mankind, and may not, unless it be to do justice on an offender, take away or impair the life or what tends to the preservation of the life, liberty, health, limb, or goods of another. Locke is identifying what he described as a natural law that should govern human action, that no one ought to harm anyone else, and when we are not in competition, we should be trying to help each other and preserve the rest of mankind. This type of common sense touched on some of these issues, but you also have to remember that this is a time when kings and emperors ruled the world. What gave them that right? This was a very controversial idea, challenging some of these fundamental notions of who should rule, who has the right to rule, and to what degree should people exert control over one another. John Locke was only one of the philosophers who figured prominently during this period of the Enlightenment. As we will learn in the next lecture, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and others would use the tools of scientific method and reason to determine what rights and responsibilities those who governed had, and what the role of government should be, and how government should be structured. As you watch the next video on liberty and equality, see if you can identify how the Enlightenment philosophers used examples and reason to determine how government should be structured. The scientific revolution and the writings and philosophy of the Enlightenment would ultimately inform many of the ideas that underlie the American Revolution, the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and the U.S. Constitution.